You're tuning in to the Bueno Power Hour podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcast. I am your host, Arthur Bueno, and on this episode, I am doing another segment of the series In the Scene. I did call it Local Scene Influences, but I think that sounds trash, and I want to change it. So today, or at least in this episode that you're hearing either tonight, today, in the morning, whatever, it would be called In the Scene. So, yeah, I just thought about that, and now I decided to make it an official thing. So, yeah, In the Scene. In the Scene. And if you guys didn't get a chance to listen to the last episode of this segment, please, check it out. There should be a link on the description here. And to kind of just sort of give a description a little bit about it, it's basically me kind of talking about my inspirations in the local scene. That's why I called it the local scene inspirations. And kind of like sort of delving into that and talking about it and sort of share my experiences about like some of these bands that sort of influenced me to play and listen to the type of music I listen to today. And I realized that a lot of these bands, most of those people don't even play music anymore, or like have gone into different avenues of music, and I'm trying to kind of remember all this music that people have created over the years, and it's also another thing is that like I never really like I wasn't really part of a lot of stuff that was out there, and I realized like I missed out on a lot of stuff, but then I also was part of a lot of stuff. So I don't know how long this whole segment's going to be, but I'll figure it out. I mean, I there's so many bands out there that I'll definitely discover, and we'll kind of showcase in the show. So yeah. Well, here we go. For this episode, I will be talking about one specific band. Like I did on the last one, it was Peel Apparition. This actually is sort of an extension of that band. This band is called Bridgework Device. And Bridgework Device, they did not last very long. At least for what I known, they actually only played maybe one or two shows that I remembered them playing. And, man, I mean, I'm going to tell you something. When I was in that band Winter Soldier back in Hanford, and, the guitarist Neil Swift at the time, he was also the vocalist, he showed me so many, like, different bands along with his, best friend Chris Constantine. I don't know if they're still talking and shit, but having these bands be sort of a staple as to how Winter Soldier was built and how some of the bands that I created were built. This band in particular was so inspirational to me. I mean, I listened to their like EP, like front and back, almost every day. The band was called Bridgework Device. It featured a guitarist named John Bell, who I had definitely, I was definitely inspired by, and he had this sort of way of guitar playing that I just didn't, I couldn't really fathom. I couldn't understand. He had a kind of a way to sort of implement jazz and hardcore, but indie rock at the same time. And I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is about John Bell, and I don't know what he's doing these days. I remember the last time I remembered, at least, he was doing more bluegrass kind of style guitar playing. And I wasn't really into that. I was always into his, like, really more progressive sounding, like, style of music. But this was one of the bands that I got me, interested in, and got me really influenced by John Bell at that time, writing this style of music, and how to kind of write in his kind of world of shit. John Bell was the last guitarist that would play on the third EP of defunct Pure Apparition, and it wasn't as good as I wished it to be. But knowing how John Bell is, he, at least for me, he's always had this knack for color in his chord progression, his, like, chord structures. The scales that he uses were just so, they were so intricate. Very, they had these, like, types of scales that I really, like, latched onto, that I just loved so much. And these arpeggios, these, I don't know, man. They just did it for me. You know what I mean? When a guitarist or a band just does it for you and you just can't really explain it. That's really what's happening right now. Excuse me, I'm gonna go get a drink there. So anyway, yeah. So Bridgework Device, the first time I saw them play, it was at this place in Hanford called Adventure Park. And Adventure Park, man, I don't know if it still exists today, but one of the people in my band, or in the previous band I was in, Nathan's brother Neil, would I don't know if he threw this show in particular, but it was a show at Adventure Park. And what was the bill was, we were part of the bill, but excuse me. But Bridgework Device was actually going to play, I think, first. And this was the first time, I saw them. John Bell had, like, this weird Jackson guitar. Usually you would play Jacksons. If you were going to play a Jackson guitar, you would be playing metal. But he had this Jackson guitar with a tremolo system, and he was just playing this cool fucking indie rock mathy type of shit, and I was just like, what the fuck is this, man? What is this? I just did not understand it. I fucking did not understand how he was, like, writing these lines along with the singer. I don't know the singer very well, or at all, period, but he was able to kind of play these crazy arpeggios as well, and really write these unique, like, riffs, and they had good chemistry together. It was pretty amazing seeing them play. So I remembered sitting there, or at least standing there, and just watching John Bell the whole time. And I even in one of the songs I've heard, or even one of the songs that they played throughout that set, they had a trumpet player. I was like, oh my god, that's kind of cool. That, like, they put a horn instrument in there. It was just so unique, and so inspiring to me that I kind of wanted to gravitate to that type of guitar playing. Being able to kind of jump strings on the scales and shit like that, playing these crazy arpeggios. Back then, like, there was really no rules. You just played this sort of aggressive style of music, and it was melodic, and it hit you. It really hit you. And if you guys liked, what's a good band to kind of describe this band? Because I can't really compare. They had their own sound. You know what I mean? Maybe Farrakhan would probably be the best description of this, but they were a little harder. Farrakhan's a lot more, I don't know, they're a lot more twangier, they're a lot more punkish. These guys were a little bit more hardcore. And so it was a different time. Oh man, I mean, it was a wonderful time to kind of like listen to this shit and see it like play live. Adventure Park, let me tell you something. Adventure Park was certainly a mecca for like local shows, man. People really, it was such a really, really fun time, like growing up in Lemoore and Hanford and witnessing all this shit. It was just so cool. You know what I mean? I loved every minute of it. And John Bell at that time, like I said, he was kind of my hero, and I really looked up to him as a guitarist. Let's see. Let me go and cut to one of their songs. I'm going to showcase about maybe two. I think that'd be good enough here. Unfortunately, when I was sort of like looking through this kind of just looking through all the bands that I grew up with, and just looking at like the local, like, local bands that I have, unfortunately, they don't have song names. Some of them don't have song names. So this particular track that I'm going to show you or introduce to you is like track 4. You know what I mean? And let's go check it out. This is Bridgework Device. It's the 4th track on their EP that totally does not exist anymore. And I hope you guys enjoy this track.
I've waited forever, as if you know what that means. We were this crowd of regrets in the motives I said. Liar smile, a cheated set of eyes, a fool's cage, a broken hearts.
So that was track 4 of Bridgework Device EP. And yeah, goddamn, like listening to that right now just made me like all nostalgic. I mean, you can tell, like, so aggressive. It was kind of melodic. You know, there's just so much like punch to that shit. You know what I mean? I guess I'll kind of share another experience I had with Bridgework, and so there was actually a I forgot what it was, man. It was in downtown Hanford. There was a building where the specific building, on the very top floor of it, they allowed people to rent out a space to, practice music, and basically pay, like rent, to save a space to, play music and make noise. But you can only go in there like at around like 7 or 8 o'clock at night to practice. Business closed like at 6:30 or something like that. They had this, I don't know what building it was. It obviously it's probably renovated now or even torn down, but they had they allowed bands to kind of like practice up there, and below were also businesses. They had like some sort of like shitty like taco joint, serve beer and whatever fucking bullshit. And so I remembered this one particular show. I think this dude Ethan Hacker had a reggae band that was playing that night. They like had sort of I'm trying to think. They try to combine both hardcore and like reggae together, and it's been done before with punk. Punk and hardcore and reggae does like kind of meld if you do it right. Well, there was a show that happened. It was like in like the hallway of this like building, next to the stairs that went up, to the top floors for, rooms that you were able to practice in, blah, blah, blah. And I remembered, I remember that Bridgework Device were playing, and I remember like, dude, I gotta get high like right now. You know what I mean? Like I was gonna get stoned, and I did. I got really high. I don't know who I was with, but I got really fucking high. And I remembered like listening to this record, right? Listening to the EP. I think I did. And I was watching them play all these songs that I was listening to for months, play live. And mind you, this band has not played for a long time at that point when I was watching them. I think I remembered something had happened that night too, that I'm trying to remember. Like someone was trying to talk to me, and I was just like, no, I'm really high right now. Don't talk to me. You know what I mean? I was a big fucking pothead, man. It was so bad. It was so bad, and I don't know why. I just smoked. Anyway, so I'm sitting there fucking loaded, and I remember them playing, and all I could think of doing is watch John Bell. And I just was so amazed by like his skill set and how quick he was on the neck. And when you sit there and you just watch a band play, and all you can do is just nod your head, right? And you're just like, wow, this is so good. Yeah, fucking shit. Yeah. Like, oh my god, like that was, oh my god, that was so good. That was fucking good. That's how I was reacting the whole time. Like I was reacting the whole time, just just by looking at them, staring at John Bell, and just nodding like, what the fuck is going on, man? You know what I mean? And it was so funny to kind of like know that John Bell would become like a fellow that I would like soon work with, you know. I actually worked with him in a Guitar Center in Fresno with Tommy McCarthy from his previous, from the previous band that I had shown last podcast. And shit, dude. I mean, like, John was so fucking obnoxious and loud, and I loved his Gibson guitar. His Gibson guitar was like one of my favorite guitars to play with. It was insane, man. It was insane. And seeing this dude like, you know, play and being able to kind of work with him was equally insane. He got me high too. Like he was such a fucking pothead, man. It was insane. You know. But anyway, John Bell, you know, was again just a big inspiration. And I forgot to mention that that record, along with the previous, you know, songs that I'd shown you from the last podcast, was produced. I think Dustin Medeiros helped produce both of those records, those like small little EPs, those little batch of songs. And that's another story I wanted to talk about too. So I remembered, I think Winter Soldier were like doing like, you know, recordings, and we were doing it at Dustin's like place in Hanford, like in the outskirts of Hanford. And I remembered he showed us the instrumentals. And the funny thing is that I think it was Dustin. Dustin gave me the instrumentals of Bridgework Device. Like he was showing me like you know, just the shit that they were recording. It was way more different than the, you know, the EP or the batch of songs that I have now. I don't know where that, like, you know, batch of songs of those instrumentals went, but man, I would love to have those, man, back. Excuse me. Yeah, he sat there, and I think we just listened to like all 6 songs, and it just sounded so cool, and it sounded so tight. And I just was so amazed, you know, by like the amount of detail that the songs had. Just some of the shit that like these guys did as musicians in these batch of songs. Like they really crafted it well, and that's what I wanted. I don't think Winter Soldier had that. Like, we were a pretty sloppy band, you know, for that time. You know, growing up with Nathan and all of them. There were some times where we were really tight and we were able to kind of like come together, but we had a lot of like, you know, we had a lot of growing up to do musically. But yeah, it was Dustin that had kind of shown us how to, like, you know, or at least shown us some of those instrumentals and kind of gave us those, gave us a chance. You know what I mean? He gave us a chance to sort of check it out, and I was really happy about that. You know, I really was happy about, you know, having him kind of just show us some of that batch of music that no one had probably ever heard yet. And Dustin was a pretty big part of like those recordings that I kind of grew up with and kind of brought with me growing up. So I definitely give Dustin a props. Now, let me go into another music break, and then I guess I'll kind of talk a little bit more, and then, you know, maybe end the podcast from here. But you know, unfortunately, I didn't really have all the other, like, I don't have more stories with John. But you know, after the music break, I'll kind of just sort of talk about what other, like, you know, avenues of music he went into and that I remembered. So this is track 6 off their EP. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one as well. And that is track 6 off their EP. And yeah. Those 2 songs, I think, were the most played out of that whole EP for me. Just because of like the guitar work. It was so intricate, at least for me. And again, it was so aggressive sounding. It was just so fucking like in your face, you know what I mean? And I couldn't help but think like what were they fucking thinking out of the whole process? Like what drove them to kind of make music like that? That's kind of like what I've always thought about every time, like, you know, I've heard each song, you know? So yeah, I mean, Bridgework Device would actually break up and then come back together again to make another album and or another EP at least, and it wasn't as good. It wasn't something that I grew up with in a kind of. I definitely dismissed it because it wasn't. I didn't feel much of a connection that I did with this EP at least. You know, the new EP, I think it was like a red orange or something. I don't even fucking know. There was so much to it that just lost its appeal for me as, you know, the Bridgework Device, like, I guess, sound and concept. You know, John Bell, his playing started to change, and, you know, I wasn't really into it. You know, unfortunately I wasn't into it because, you know, he was getting into like more like modern like guitarists and stuff, and, you know, he wasn't really like looking at the guitar the same way as he did before. You know, before he got back with Bridgework Device to make that last EP, he was in this band called Done for Good. And it actually had Tommy McCarthy from Pure Apparition and a folk named Ethan Hacker, and also the producer for both the Bridgework Device and Pure Apparition, Dustin Medeiros, playing drums. I forgot the bass player's name. I think his name was Jacob. Didn't really know him, but he seemed pretty legit and just out there doing his own thing. Good bass player. Really played the notes well and really added the color to it. Tommy McCarthy at that time as well was his playing was starting to change for me, and wasn't really into it. I was just like, you guys are kind of like going into these new directions that I'm not really into. Though that in Done for Good definitely had some songs that like really hit in the pocket, and I definitely appreciated that. I'll definitely show those. I think I'll show those songs in another time, and I'll certainly have more stories to talk about. I think that'll pretty much wrap it up for this episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcast. This In the Scene segment is certainly a fun one. And since I can't really find people to interview right now, I might as well just keep the rhythm and just sort of just talk about, my experiences and the music that I've been influenced by. And maybe it'll shed some light with some other like folks out there. I might do another one again if I don't find another person to interview in the coming week or weeks. At the time of this recording, I got about 2 days to pack for Las Vegas. And this is pretty much the reason why I decided to record. Because I know that this coming Friday I'll be in Vegas and I won't have time to like post up anything and shit. So, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you like this episode, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want, podcasts every 2 weeks, and you want, videos every Monday, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get notifications on these uploads, man, go ahead and hit that notification bell. I'm just excited to be able to talk about stuff like this. So, yeah. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Bueno Power Hour podcast. And until next time, bye.